You're listening to A Seat at the Tech Table, a podcast by Sisters in Tech, hosted by Anna and Esther Kofariji. This podcast highlights the experiences of Black women working and thriving in the tech industry. You'll learn about how they found their paths into tech, and hopefully you'll be inspired to consider whether there's a seat for you at the tech table.
Today's guest is Ryan Barner, a San Francisco-based software engineer.
Hey, Ryan.
Hey, sisters. How's it going?
We're good. We're excited to have you on the show today.
We are indeed.
Amazing. So just to kind of get things kicked off, we'd love you to kind of tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Sure. Well, my name is Ryan Barner. I'm a software engineer on the in the Rider Growth org at Lyft, which is a rideshare company based in San Francisco. We have operations all over the United States and in Canada. Like I said, I'm from San Francisco, originally from LA, though.
Cool. Well, welcome.
Thanks.
One of the things we like to kind of do in this podcast is just go way back and kind of figure out where people started off. So tell us a bit about your background, kind of what you studied at university, what your early interests were, that kind of thing.
Sure. Well, when I got into university, I went to the University of Southern California, which is a private institution in LA. It was about 15 minutes away from my home. And I kind of went in very, not scared, but very safe. I knew I had an interest in computer science, and I even selected that as my major. Got in the classroom, saw a black and green terminal screen, and I thought, absolutely not. This is not for me. I've never taken a computer science class before. There's no way, like, I'm going to make it through these 4 years. Like, I'm already behind. So I went ahead and kind of dropped that major and picked up economics, largely because I really respected the business school and their alumni association and its reputation. But it was kind of like too late to apply to the business school. So I figured, okay, let me do something that is related or has a lot of the similar requirements as a business major, but still being very like math centric. So I picked up economics.
Cool. And I'm really interested in something you said just there. You said you got into the kind of computer science class and you said to yourself, you said I was already behind. I'd love to dig into that and kind of dig into your thinking. What was it that you saw and what was it that you experienced that made you feel that way?
Sure. I went to literally 2 classes. The first class, well, even before classes, orientation, where all the new freshmen were welcomed. I think I saw maybe 1 or 2 other Black women out of the whole. I think the first class had to be about 200 to 400 students. And then kind of in the first class that I had, I remember the pre-class banter was, are you all PC or Mac people? And it sounds very basic, like a basic question today. But at the time I thought, what the heck is that? Like, I can't even participate in pre-class banter. Like, there's no way that I'm going to be able to survive. So definitely like this feeling of I don't belong.
I have a question. It's quite interesting that you even thought about doing computer science as a major. I guess my question is like, where did you hear about computer science? For me, like back in the day, computer science was a bit of a unknown territory until doing maybe a degree at university. But prior knowledge of that just wasn't there for me. So I guess can we dig into kind of what your understanding of computer science was?
Yeah. I was a kid of the early 2000s. I was on MySpace a lot and, customizing my page in HTML. And I thought that that was the coolest thing ever. And when I found out, that people actually could do that as a career and get paid for it, I thought, absolutely, like, that's what I'm going for. Because, none of the other fields really appealed to me. Like, I couldn't see myself going to an office in a suit every day or being a lawyer, being in the medical field. Like, those just didn't appeal to me. I even went to a medical magnet high school. And, through my time volunteering with the hospital, I thought, I can't do this, on a day-to-day, definitely not going through like 12 years of school and residency. So computer science, I kind of reached out to my counselor. I said, I don't quite know what I want to do, but I know it's something in computers. And I think she suggested computers.
Cool. So that's so interesting. So how did kind of your university career go, and then graduating and starting kind of the working world? Like, what was that journey, and what was your thinking along that way?
Sure. Well, when I was in school, and, I mentioned previously that I was trying to get into the business school. Well, after a few classes in economics, I thought, okay, I actually kind of like this stuff. I like what it focuses on. It's basically trying to make sense of everything in our society and trying to explain why people make the decisions they make. So it ties together all of our decision making, from wars to the environment to where we send our kids to school to medicine. It had all of these applications that I was fascinated by. Kind of first off, I got distracted with freedom. I had like a boy fling that I was into and was going down the path of not even going to classes just to hang out with him. Splitting up with him was the best thing that ever happened to me. That kind of got me back in focus. I, got involved with different on-campus groups, like, of course, the Black Student Association. I was a cheerleader. I did different things like that. Fell into depression in my sophomore year of school, started seeing a therapist. And kind of after getting out of that, after 6 months, I told myself, I've got to start living for myself. I've been, so doing everything by the book and very safe. Like I said, I went to school, 15 minutes away from where I grew up. So I went ahead and decided to study abroad. And that was the furthest away that I had lived and furthest away that I had gone. Went to Milan and studied there.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, that was probably one of the highlights of my college career. And ever since then, I had just been super inspired to see a different perspective, try something out that was completely new and that scared me. But always wanting to keep in mind tech. Even though I studied economics and it's not, very tech heavy, I really wanted to pay attention in our classes where we, analyze data with R and Stata, and, told myself, well, if I can't get into like a software engineering career, I don't even think I knew, that was a career option for computer science grads. If I can't get there, then with economics, I'll at least get into something, related or very close to, whether that be like working in business for a tech company or something like that. So yeah, I picked up a business law major and learned or tried to work for like the tech side of the U.S. Attorney's Office when I was there. That didn't work out. But I did get offered a role at Deloitte in rediscovery. And there was kind of where I was like, yeah, I really need to start gunning for a role in software engineering.
Cool. So what I'm sensing is that even when you decided to kind of go kind of the business/economics route, you still had a thread of an interest in tech that kind of you still held. And then you said that kind of after you'd kind of had a couple of jobs, you started to think about maybe pivoting back into software engineering. And I'd really love us to dig into that. I mean, it could have gone the other way. It could have been a case of you forgot totally about software engineering. So what is it that really maintained that in you and made you decide, no, I need to go in this direction?
Yeah. My parents, I would say, like, my parents would always say, do something that you enjoy doing. Don't kind of give up on finding what is going to be best for you. And that kind of got me focused towards, I could stay on this path of consulting and do that, but it wouldn't be kind of feeding my soul, or it wouldn't allow me to explore my curiosities in tech. So I just, never gave up that passion. I tried to figure out what is going to be my way there. And I saw, just working in tech, adjacent careers being that.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm really interested in what you just said about kind of tech adjacent. And but I want to kind of take a step back, actually, for 1 second, because you said you were working in consulting. And I wonder if kind of in your consulting career, whether there were any things that kind of you feel are offered you a good foundation to maybe one day go into kind of software engineering. So what were the things you learned in your consulting career that you're kind of really grateful for and think kind of really, really have helped you going forward?
Absolutely. The determination to kind of never give up. Because there are some very long hours in that you will see in tech as well.
Yeah.
It also taught me how to be a professional, how to write an email. Like, you don't realize how huge of a skill it is just to write an email.
Yeah.
And they're not teaching you that in a lot of tech companies. A lot of the professional development is kind of looked over because, a lot of startups or tech companies are trying to grow fast, or they're extremely casual. But kind of that formal training, how to conduct yourself in a meeting, I think I really appreciate that about consulting for teaching me.
Cool. Okay, so and then I'll jump into kind of what you just said about tech adjacent, because it's random, but my early career was law, and I was really trying to pursue a career in law, and I would always do kind of law adjacent roles, which I think is sometimes it can be a bit funny because it'll be law adjacent and then there'll be no law in it. So tell us a bit about your kind of tech adjacent careers.
Yeah. So the first one, I actually was on a kind of path to law school as well. Like, when I tell you I was trying out everything, I was. And one of them was when I was externing for the U.S. Attorney's Office. They kind of had me helping out decipher Facebook timelines and Tumblr pages. Like, imagine explaining what Tumblr is to, these big wig attorneys, where this had to be about, this was, I want to say 2013. So before a lot of people had Facebook or had Twitter, I was kind of explaining this to them. That was one role. Another tech adjacent role was something that I did in eDiscovery with Deloitte in the consulting field. And basically what eDiscovery is when companies are suing each other, there's, for IP cases, intellectual property cases, different things like that, the judge will order an eDiscovery period where basically both companies get together their electronic evidence. So would go in. Sometimes we would confiscate, laptops, cell phones, get the data from that.
Wow.
And some people had been working in SQL. I hadn't known SQL at that time. And some, were even coding in Python. So that kind of showed me, okay, there may be something here. There may be an avenue that I could explore doing that.
Mm.
After, spending some time in New York, I said, okay, I've got to get to the Bay Area, at least if I really want to make really want to gun towards, a tech career.
Mm-hmm.
Got Deloitte to transfer me to the San Francisco office.
Wow.
And one of my colleagues at Deloitte went to Lyft. And, I kind of reached out to him after he had been there for a few months and said, hey, how are things going? Like, I'm very interested. And he said, why don't you come down for lunch? And always being prepared. I brought my resume. I was, ready. Sure enough, he brought me around to the team. They interviewed me, after lunch.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I left and, had got the job that night.
Wow.
Yeah. Gratefully, he had been doing such a great job. They needed people. Lyft was pretty young. This was back in early 2016. And they kind of brought me on to handle a lot of their tax reporting.
Okay.
And that's kind of how I got into like tech adjacent roles. Like I learned SQL on that and worked closer with engineers and got to see, what they did on a day to day. And I said, you know what, I feel like I'm working as many hours as them. I've taught myself a language. Like, why don't I really explore this?
When you started working at Lyft, what was the role that you started as?
That started off as a financial analyst.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Okay, I feel like just in that little segment, you've given us a bit of kind of a masterclass because you've said so many things that I think people should really listen out for. So number one, you maintained relationship with that ex-colleague. I mean, I don't know if you were kind of having regular contact or if it was just kind of like a casual thing. Tell us about that because I think sometimes people neglect their network, really. Forget that they know people who know people or they know people in certain positions. So tell us about how you kind of maintain your network in that way.
Sure. Well, USC always stressed the power of a network and, maintaining friendships and just they really stressed the power of relationships. So that was embedded in me, back in college, even before that in high school. And I really learned the power of them once, like back in school where we would get like a list of all the students in the class and their contact information. At the start of every class, I would send out an email to everyone. Hey, I'm starting a study group. We're going to meet in this library. Show up, if you're interested. And some of my best friends to this day are folks that, showed up to those study groups. And that taught me really early, the best people for you are going to be the people that are around you. It's not always, people who are in positions where you want to be. Your peers are extremely important. So, I just maintain that. You never know when you're going to need people. But if you guys are kind of in a similar space, chances are they're going to help you out in your path. So, that's the mindset that I had.
Okay, cool. So you also mentioned that you took your resume when you were going to lunch with you. Tell us about why you did that. Like, what kind of spurred that action?
Sure. I had been, I was just hungry, I was super hungry. I stayed ready. There's like a Sugar Free line. He's a rapper from LA. One of his most famous songs is goes something like, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So that I try and carry that wherever I go, like always trying to be prepared and thinking to the next step, thinking, if this were to happen in the most idyllic way, what do I need to be, or how do I need to be ready to receive that?
That's it. I love that. I always say that as well. Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Ready to receive your blessing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the last lesson from that little segment that you just did was, you said that you learned SQL, or that you taught yourself. Tell us a bit about kind of how you did that. Because I think for a lot of people who want to enter into tech or any career path, and there's kind of a body of learning that you need, it can be intimidating. So kind of what were the things you did either in your roles or kind of on your own outside of work? How did you kind of upskill yourself?
Sure. I remember that first day on the job, getting a SQL query, and the guy training me, shout out to Edwin. He said, here you go, figure it out. He didn't say that, literally, but that's definitely how it felt. And I pretty much had to do a lot of pattern matching, reading a lot of my colleagues' queries and just trying to make sense of it. And, sure enough, over time, after seeing it so many times, you kind of understand the pattern. Outside of work, I took, we used a tool called Mode Analytics, which is kind of in PostgreSQL. They had a tutorial that they offered to their users. I took that to kind of help me out, but it was mainly, just reading a bunch of my colleagues' queries.
Okay, cool. So tell us about the switch. So you joined Lyft as an analyst, but you're now a software engineer. Tell us about that transition.
Sure. So kind of when I joined Lyft, I thought, okay, yes, finally I'm in a tech company. Like, I can just learn on the job and work my way up to being a software engineer. Absolutely not. We were pre-IPO. We were the first rideshare company to go public. There was no room for like extra training on the side, passion training, any of that. There are definitely folks who, made the move up that way, but I wasn't one. So what I did was thought, okay, I could get into a boot camp. I found out about boot camps and said, okay, this is something that I can like train up on the side. And if I get in, I will have to leave Lyft. Lyft was not happy with, not that they weren't happy, but they were not going to allow me to stay in my role and kind of like take some time off to do that, which I'm kind of sad about. Like, I wish I could have been able to take a sabbatical, but it made sense. Like, I was in after the like financial analyst role, I became a financial data analyst and then an operations analyst. And, in the operations role, a manager was kind of like, after you do the boot camp, you're going to want to be a software engineer. You're not going to want to be an operations analyst. So unfortunately, you would have to leave, if you want to pursue that.
Oh, my God.
And it was, a dream of mine. It felt like something that I had been working towards since I first left that class back when I was 17 as a freshman. So I figured, this is the time I gotta go and do it. I'm still, young. I'm still new in my career. I would hate to continue on and always have this feeling of what if.
I don't want to kind of underplay how brave that was, because that could have been another, what's the word, blocker or barrier kind of point where you decided, okay, maybe not. How did you, it feels like a weird question, but how did you muster up the courage to say, okay, I can't keep my job, but I am going to move to this other thing? I know you've already said that kind of it's something that you were wanting to do kind of for years and from when you were young, but at that point of decision, like, how did you say, no, I'm going to do this?
Sure. I had I had about 4 years of like starting over a million and one times. Like I would speak to mentors. A lot of mentors said, you're on a good path, like to stay on that. I had mentors even say, you should go for roles that they're going to hire you in. They were like, they would much rather prefer to have, someone autistic who's been coding since they're 7. These are the literal words that I'm hearing from, people that I looked up to, people that I trusted. And these are all, most of these kind of, most of this advice, like to not pursue it, came from people who weren't in tech roles. Everyone who was a software engineer on the other end was like, absolutely, you should do it. But yeah, just asking a lot of people, kind of assessing, okay, well, here's how much money I would leave on the table. Here are my opportunity costs. But I knew that, there was a larger earning potential. I knew that there were going to be opportunities for me to, let's say if I wanted to freelance or, maybe leave a company and start working for myself, I knew I had a much better opportunity of doing that in software engineering than finance. Finance always felt like something that I was doing just to hold me over until I got to tech anyway.
Yeah.
That gave me the courage to say, all right, this is the time. You should go ahead and fight for your dreams, pursue your dreams.
Okay, could you tell us, like, if we can go back a little bit, if you can tell us a little bit about the bootcamp, because I'm quite interested to kind of understand what happened there.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be completely honest. Like the bootcamp was $16,000. They gave me a half ride scholarship. So anyone who is considering that, definitely want to assess all of your costs and not just, the explicit costs. Think about everything that you're leaving on the table. Think about, your earning potential and the impact that it could have on that. And all of the other costs like your rent, all the food, because you're not going to be making money if you do it, full time for 3 months and then, up to 6 months of unemployment afterwards, up to a year even. But, in that program, I deemed it, the next best step because before I had left, this is something that I should have included in my last answer. But I found out about Lyft's apprentice program.
Oh, okay.
And what that is similar to an internship where you're kind of starting off new, but it's for folks who, are not fresh out of college, who've had different careers before. And it's really just trying to diversify tech. But, not only in race and gender, but also professional background.
Okay.
So I said, all right, things are looking up. I see a potential for me after this boot camp. So, but the boot camp was great. That was that was 3 months. I went to an all women's boot camp.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, I really appreciated going to that boot camp because at first, so I tried really hard to get into Hack Reactor, which is another competing boot camp. And I told myself, like, I don't want to go to Hackbright because it's all women. Like, the industry is not going to be that way. But then after not getting into Hack Reactor, I was like, let me check out Hackbright again. And it's funny how life works out because Hack Reactor, I did at least like 3 or 4 interviews and didn't get in. Hack Reactor or Hackbright, I got in on, the first interview.
Oh, wow.
On top of that, I hadn't done research on the languages that they taught. Hack Reactor focuses mainly on JavaScript, and Hackbright focuses on Python, which is what Lyft uses mainly. And, Hackbright was the better option for me all along. So ended up getting into Hackbright, and it was just great to be in an environment of all women. Like the same thing that that kind of deterred me from going for Hackbright in the first place ended up being one of the main reasons why I loved it. When I started off in engineering as like a comp sci major back when I was a freshman, like I told you guys, being one of the only women in that whole freshman class was something that kind of turned me off from the field. Fast forward 10 years later to be in a classroom full of women trying to learn how to be software engineers. Like, it's one of those like God plan moments, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and that is definitely something that has carried me along, just my faith in God and him kind of telling me like, do it. I'm behind you. You're not doing this alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I can totally relate.
I love that. So I think I'm glad that you mentioned that Lyft had that apprenticeship program. So I'm guessing at the end of the program, that's when you, at the end of the bootcamp, you applied to the apprenticeship program. Is that how it worked?
Correct. And it's funny how it worked out. Like, so I graduated boot camp in March. Their applications opened up in April. I interviewed in May, started in June.
Oh,
it was like
perfect.
That's another way that because sometimes you need like little signs that this is what is supposed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly how I felt.
Yeah.
God's plan.
Yes.
That's it.
Indeed.
So you're now at Lyft. Tell us about your current role. Well,
Sure.
The current role at that point. Yeah.
Sure. I am on the comms platform team as of Monday. I'm going to start with a new team. Previously, I was on Writer Lifecycle and Writer Incentives. And basically what they did was, or what we did was incentivize people to use Lyft, whether that be, through coupons or through cool bonuses, different things like that. There are also some kind of delight projects, such as, the cars would change for different holidays or rider badges, different things like that. Focusing on the back end and really enjoying being a product engineer. I think it's cool to be able to build something and then, tell your mom or your friends, hey, open up your app and check this out. This is what I built. So.
Okay, cool. So just getting into maybe a little bit of the detail of, around your role, could you just tell us what like an average day looks like for you and what you do as a software engineer?
Sure. Average day, I'm kind of giving status updates about projects in what we call stand-ups.
Yeah. Okay.
And that name came from, quick meetings that people would have standing up all in a circle instead of, going into a room and sitting down and having it be a bit more formal. Stand-ups are quicker. Not with COVID anymore. We're not, standing all together. Yeah. So it typically starts off with that. Then I'll kind of assess what projects I have to work on. Sometimes the tickets are quick, like a day or two. Some of them draw out for weeks. And it's really, it varies case by case, but oftentimes I'm reading documentation to figure out how different parts of Lyft's architecture works so I can get this ticket fixed. Other times I'm reaching out to different teams to understand, how to interact with their services. Lyft kind of works on a microservice basis, which is basically, the whole app is made up of all these different tiny apps that each have their job and work together. And it makes it easier for like agile develop at the same time without running into conflicts too often. Or so I'll typically do that. Other times I'm like planning for a future project that I'm doing and writing a tech spec, which is kind of like identifying all the milestones or everything that we need to build before we actually build. And this kind of helps us scope out the project in terms of timing and all of the resources necessary before, setting a deadline, getting halfway through and realizing we're not going to meet it.
So I think what's exciting is that like this was your dream and kind of now you're living the dream, which is so cool. I'd love to know, okay, I guess this is two questions. I'll try and make this succinct. What's your favorite thing kind of about being a software engineer? And what is something that's slightly unexpected about the role that you've encountered?
My favorite thing about software engineering, it kind of feels like generating like generational wealth is important to me. And wealth is of the heart, mind, and pocket. One, I'm generating wealth by, gaining all these cool skills and becoming, a shareholder in these tech companies that will be here, for years and years that I could pass down to future generations. The other part of it is staying abreast of all of the new tech that's coming out. I think being in a tech company, you really get to learn a lot about not only the tech, but like how we're developing as a society, because all of the innovations that the world will see are coming through tech. So being close to that is really, really important to me. Notice how I haven't hit on anything technical yet, I guess. So that's probably, the other thing that's really interesting to me. Like it feels like I'm wielding magic. Like I can bring rideshare to people through like some words that I wrote into a program. Like that is mind-blowing to me.
I think, I don't know if you hit on it, if you want to kind of get involved, but the second question was about unexpected. What was the unexpected?
Oh, yes. What is unexpected about, or what I did not expect about software engineering? I assumed that there would be so much more coding on the day-to-day. A lot of the prep for, a software engineering role is like, do this leak code problem, do all these different algorithms, but you're not coding, complex algorithms on the day-to-day. Oftentimes, like I said, you're project planning, you're tech speccing, you're learning about the systems and architecture. You're not doing a lot of coding. It definitely varies by role and by company. And, looking forward to, in my next kind of role, doing a bit more coding, but that's definitely something that was surprising to me on a day-to-day. Coding on your own or with your app is a bit different from what you'll be doing as a professional software engineer.
Okay, cool. So now that you are a professional software engineer, what kind of advice would you give to ladies who are looking to carve a career path into a similar role as yours?
Sure. My advice is, one, to never give up. Never listen to the naysayers who tell you, that you can't do it. Or sometimes the biggest naysayer is yourself. Kind of quieting your... my mom always told me, like, you have enough people telling you no or being negative on a day-to-day. Like, the last person that should be that towards you is you. So building up your confidence in that. If you've got the confidence, don't stop coding. Like I said, a lot of your roles may not be coding most of your time, but that's definitely something that's going to help you progress in your role, help you get the job. So constantly be building, learning. That's another thing that surprised me, how much learning and reading you're going to be doing. True, a boot camp is not going to make you totally the expert software engineer. But I did think that I would be further along after the boot camp, not realizing that there was still so much learning that I had to do, but realizing like that is just the nature of the industry, whether you follow the traditional route or you didn't. So just getting used to learning, a new language every year, reading long form books of these computer science topics, reading articles, staying abreast of like how the market moves as well. Because when you're assessing like where you want to work, especially if it's a startup, you have to tell yourself like, is this a good financial move for me? Am I going to be wasting time at a startup that will most likely fail, or is there some potential in this? You learn that not from what the company says, but from what the market says. And the only way you learn that is by, learning the market.
I think that's such an important and interesting point because, I think you're completely right that one of the things you do gain about working in the tech industry is an understanding of the tech industry and an understanding of products and software and we're in my language, we call it product sense, just a sense of how products can be developed and what products are actually going to be beneficial to people. And so I think that's a super interesting skill to ensure that you're kind of honing as you work in the tech industry. I wanted to quickly kind of jump back actually and dig into the interview process because I think one of the things I've heard, I'm sure we've all heard the story about crazy software engineering interview processes. So I'd love you to kind of dig into kind of your experience and just kind of any tips that you might give to people who are thinking about venturing that way.
Sure. Well, you get the gamut. A lot of front-end roles are going to be testing you on the front end. So definitely being strong in those languages. Same with the back end. Same with full stack roles, which is front and back. There's, also a different kind of interview process for like your data engineering roles. So definitely like understanding what role you're going for and kind of the tech stack and style they use at the company is super important. I've had relatively like positive experiences with interviewing, and I don't mean, positive as in like each of them have turned out great for me or, turned into a job. I just mean positive as in like kind of those horrors that I heard or had about like poor interviewers. I really haven't got. A lot of my interviews have mainly been on like algorithms. First, there's like a initial recruiter screen where they kind of tell you about the role. Next, it's like a technical take-home interview where you're, solving an algo online. Still need to get better with those. And then there's the on-site where they have you going through algos in a similar manner as the first kind of technical screen, but next you're doing it with an engineer that works there. And just staying calm is the key, and speaking through the problem, getting really good at like talking and coding at the same time is a skill that I've had to learn in interview prepping. That's pretty much how it's been.
Cool. Amazing stuff. So
now that sorry. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Before we finish up, it would be great to know what your future plans are. What are your next steps?
Sure. My next plans are just to get better as a software engineer. I want to be able to kind of build some independence and rely a little less on like staff engineers or staff or the senior engineers. And that is definitely a goal of mine as well, like becoming a senior engineer. I also want to work on my own projects outside of work more.
Cool.
Yeah. And, you know, it's a dream of mine to start a company one day or make something that I could sell. I think that will really make me feel like a badass or like I've mastered something. So that's what's coming up next. And always, you know, staying involved with the community. As I look forward, definitely making sure that, you know, 17-year-old me or someone who was like me at 17 years old now, you know, doesn't have those feelings that I felt that, you know, that they didn't belong in tech, that they didn't have somebody that they could reach out to with questions or kind of navigate the career. So always staying involved with the community of future engineers is what I plan to do as well.
Love it, love it, love it.
Amazing. Well, like, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. I think it's just so inspirational because, yeah, you had your ups and downs, deviated paths, but like you definitely kind of got back onto the path that you always dreamed of, which is, I think, incredibly inspiring.
Definitely.
I'm absolutely honored that you guys, you know, invited me on to the podcast. I think this is amazing and necessary, and so grateful that I met you, Esther, at the tech event. It's stuff like, you know, tech that does this. This is another reason why I love tech.
Yeah.
The networking opportunities are amazing.
Exactly. Incredible.
How did you meet each other? Because I don't know this story.
Do you want to tell it?
Yeah, it was a Lyft event. I can't remember what the Lyft event was. I'm not sure if it was like data science or what, but Esther was there. I just introduced myself to her, and yeah, we've maintained contact ever since.
Yeah. It's funny. I feel like I remember the exact spot. It was around the food at the Lyft event.
I think there was like a charcuterie board or something out. I remember that.
Yeah. At Apprenticeship. What was that? 20.
Oh, that was
maybe. I'm not sure.
Wow.
2017 or 2018. Yeah.
That sounds all right.
Love it. And it was at Lyft. That's so crazy.
Yeah, Lyft event.
I'm very grateful for like the things that I've learned, the people that I've met. It's truly become like a part of my identity, I want to say.
Amazing. Cool. So where can people find you online or if people want to kind of find out more about you, where would you like them to connect with you?
Sure. I'm rbarner14 on all platforms, Twitter, Instagram, ryanbarner.com. My resume's on there. I should have my social media to that website as well. But yeah, there's where they can find me.
Cool.
LinkedIn goes too.
Yes, absolutely.
We're all on there. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today. And yeah, best of luck. Can't wait to see where your journey goes from here because it's so exciting.
It's been so good so far. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been a blessing, you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today and listening to this episode of A Seat at the Tech Table. You can connect with us on our social media platforms. Just search @SistersInTech on Twitter and Instagram and check out our website www.sistersin.tech to see what we've got going on. Don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes and we'll bring you the next episode soon.